is your chance to experience a remarkable array of works from Tate's collection. Connected by the theme of light and spanning over 200 years, see incredible works from Turner, Kusama, Monet, Turrell, and many more. From one of the UK's most adored cultural institutions, see art in a new light. Light, works from Tate's collection. Now open.
Guess that's our cue. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the ACMI and RMIT Game Talk series presented by ACMI and RMIT Games. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we're meeting today. The First Nations people on this continent were the world's first creative technologists and have been sharing culture and stories through play for tens of thousands of years, and continue to do so today. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to any First Nations people in the room or who are tuning in via our live stream. Sovereignty was never ceded. Today, we are here to discuss Hyperecho, a commission for our ACMI's digital gallery, Gallery 5, that was created by Firepit Collective. Firepit Collective is a weird video games and digital art collective based in Melbourne, Australia. They are a community of creative folks who like to hang out IRL or online. They organise online events such as Game a Week, Zilm Night, as well as maintaining The Zone, a virtual space for hosting events like festivals, exhibitions, and launch events. I am Jini Maxwell. I'm a curator at ACMI, and I oversee the digital gallery, Gallery 5. When I started at ACMI at the end of last year, Firepit were the first people who I approached to commission because I find their work curious and exciting and really capable of creating a sense of spatiality and community in like a digital sphere, which I think is quite rare. For this commission, they created Hyperecho, which is a durational work that invites audience members to join an expansive but mostly empty world and to leave something behind, a building or a message. But these buildings and messages naturally degrade over time unless they're revisited and repaired, and each kind of can cross the event horizon to the point where they can no longer be repaired if they're left neglected for too long. In this way, an audience member's engagement with the project is spent exploring, looking at buildings and messages left by others, choosing to leave their own, and deciding what they want to maintain and what they're willing to lose to the ravages of time. Pretty chill stuff. Over the course of 3 months, this work, which is now complete and laid to rest forever, had 10,218 visitors, which saw 19,636 buildings and messages created, and 54,370 repairs made. But like I said, it was always intended to be a durational work that came to an end. Hyperecho is, to kind of borrow a term from previous works of yours, a zone that like always had kind of finality built into it, which is something we're going to discuss. Later in this talk. But first, we have 3 avatars of Firepit Collective.
Hello.
Andrew Gleeson, Cecile Richard, and Crystal McDonald. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for a good overview of our work and us.
I really started this interview by talking a lot. I hope to do less of that.
Fine. You're welcome to keep going.
Well, I wondered if maybe we could kind of go back to a time pre-Hyperecho and look at how Firepit Collective formed, how you met and kind of how you worked together.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a really timely question, because the anniversary of the Discord, which is kind of where Firepit really formally started, is like, I think, was it the 14th of July or something? It was something like that. It was like mid-July, and I was like, oh wow.
Was it June?
It's been a year. Yeah, June,
It was June. 14th of June, I think.
Damn it. I think like the last month has just,
Yeah.
I don't remember. Anyway.
So like a month ago was the 1 year anniversary where we formally set up a Discord for people, so that people could join who turned up to.
For people who are not familiar with Discord, could you kind of explain what that is?
It's like a kind of server with basically like a chat room with a bunch of different channels where you can join.
It's like Slack, but for fun.
Slack, but
right?
for gamers.
No, that sounds awful.
Oh, that sounds really, well, it's true.
Imagine Slack but better. That's kind of like how I imagine it. I'm just like, you know.
It's Slack for gamers.
So you developed this community, this Discord.
Mm.
What was the kind of intention behind that? How did you?
In 2021, I was just kind of fed up with being alone. I was fed up with like a whole lot of things, but like mostly I think I had a lot of like feeling that, I don't know, it just kind of felt like we couldn't really, like a lot of people, I was just thinking about how good it was to hang out in like one place in the zone during free play, which is where it kind of all started, like I suppose. And that was like when free play went online, and we just made this online space with me and Jay at the beginning. And that kind of provided the space for a lot of people during like the really tough times of the lockdown to really connect with each other in a place that felt quasi-physical, in a time of Zoom and, you know, seeing each other in video or whatever. It kind of felt like you actually were someplace and were hanging out with people, and you were seeing yourself in a way that wasn't like just an image of yourself. And I think like providing that place really kind of like inspired a whole lot of people. Like I think like in 2020, a whole bunch of people like said that the zone was like a highlight of the year, and that was like really beautiful. Like you know, like the way that felt for me was like, wow, that's incredible. And when we, you know, brought back that same like space in 2021 for free play, after it ended, and I was just feeling very like, you know, heartened by how much like people care about that place. I was like, you know, let's try to get like the people who really kind of managed to connect with each other about this place, or like about, you know, similar interests and, you know, the same type of vibe, I guess. Like I was like, let's just like get them together in this Discord server, and that's kind of like how it started. And I've been doing things for like a year ever since, just kind of very casually hanging out, and, you know, making Hyper Echo is like one of those things that just kind of happened to us, I guess. And we just kind of decided to just take on the challenge, I guess, like a few of us, and that's it.
The free play zone, for people who aren't familiar, was sort of a digital exhibition space modelled after Game Art Collective, likes digital kind of exhibition spaces that are kind of specifically intended to be a bit silly, I would say, a little bit non-directed in the way that a physical exhibition space can be. You can kind of move through it at your own pace, meet people on your own terms, rather than feeling like you're being ferried from experience to experience. And you've actually developed a few of these. You've done the free play zone. You did one. You've done other events too.
We've done one for VoiceWorks.
VoiceWorks.
We've done one for like Parallels, which is kind of, I guess, is like an event for free play. Was there another one that we did?
Well, Jay and I made, Jay Stewart, who is the other half of like the original zones. We've worked on this conference space for Brendan Keogh's workshop thingy that he organised in late 2020, I think. And that's like one of those ones that was a little bit more private and a little bit more specific, which I don't think a lot of people actually got to see, but I think it was really nice.
I got to see it, and it had Brendan's dog in it, and huge highlight for me personally. Very good zone. So you've clearly spent a lot of time thinking about kind of community building and creative spaces online and how to make that feel kind of organic and interesting. But hyperecho, which you can kind of see a screen capture of on the screen behind us, differs pretty significantly, I think, in terms of both intention and like technical back end. I thought maybe we could kind of go back to the beginning because this gorgeous scene actually began here. These were the first sketches, as I understand it, from the development of hyperecho. How quickly, and even though they are sort of adorable and rudimentary, I feel like there is a recognizable style to them. How early did you arrive at the concept for hyperecho, and how much did it change over the course of development?
I can tackle this one.
Yeah, sure.
So this was kind of when you approached us and you told us about a Gallery 5 as like this digital exhibition space, and then kind of like we pretty much that day, I think afterwards we went and had dinner, and we were just kind of just talking about it. I think we just went to like a restaurant in the city afterwards, after we met with you at ACMI. And yeah, I think we kind of instantly already had the idea. Like we wanted to, I think we kind of understood that we were expected to make a zone, just due to the nature of it being like an online exhibition, like space. It's like, it's just a website, right? But you want people to be able to kind of interact with it and make it feel like some kind of, like it would be like an artwork and whatever. And yeah, I think and the idea of like, and we kind of took the initial brief of the actual timeline, because he told us it'd be like a 3-month-long exhibition. Well, it's like a 3-month-long web page, like a website. It's like, oh, okay, so we kind of, and we knew that what we wanted, we wanted at the end of the exhibition that there wanted to be nothing left, that people would come and interact, but there'd be this kind of ephemerality, like inherent into the nature of the work. And from there, that's kind of when from that point, that's when we explored all these different concepts, and we just had all these ideas, like the buildings were like the capsule tower, kind of modeled after those, and the isometric style, we kind of thought that'd be neat and be kind of, and it would be like fairly easy to kind of make stuff in that style. And from there, and we wanted to be a bit more abstract, we wanted to maybe create like a language in it of like these like different rooms and have it be a little bit mysterious, and have that be part of trying to understand what it is and what you're meant to do. Was
I feel like the line we were sort of fed about the internet when we were young is like, anything you put on there will last forever. It's all going to be incredibly permanent. Yeah. And then it really feels like hyperecho is sort of reveals, like, I guess, the lie of that logic. It's almost an anti-monument.
Yeah.
I think the idea really of it becoming this like really ephemeral thing came, I think it really concretized itself when I think you told us about like the whole like archiving process of like these like durational works and things like that. And I think both you and I, Andy, we were like really fascinated by that aspect, and we were like, how do we like incorporate that really interesting concept into this thing? And that's how we came up with like, I think that's how we came up with the whole like decay stuff, and like, oh, you know, like, what does it mean? all of this stuff, what does it mean? And like the like ephemeral nature of the internet and like all that stuff just kind of like came about. Like it was kind of like all these things that we've already had interests in, or like already, in my case, really obsessed with, and then like it kind of all came together in that kind of it feels like, in retrospect, it feels like it came about really naturally. now, did it really happen that way when it happened? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the more like try to remember that kind of time, the more I kind of like, oh, that's right, because this would have been back in January this year when you approached it,
Yeah.
and we had a chat, and then I think that was probably around the same time there was like a lot of like crypto news going around, and all this stuff was like kind of falling apart, and this was kind of stuff that John and I who also contributed to this project, we did a talk for free play last year as like basically a talk about crypto and how it just isn't going to be fulfilling any of the promises that it's making, that it is more or less inherently a scam that most people should avoid. And I guess now we're already in July, and I think most people are kind of sick of hearing about crypto now, which is good, but it's kind of fascinating. Like even just six months ago, like the kind of the general attitude was like still slightly different. I think people were still kind of like testing it out to see, oh, maybe it could be good, maybe it could be interesting, or that feeling you don't want to miss the boat on this extremely exciting new thing that's happening.
Oh, there's so much money in it.
Yeah. And I think we were feeding into that idea as well as part of this kind of like intentional decay and basically, like exploring the idea of like what stays permanent in our digital world when currently we've seen the last like 3 decades of the web, and half of it, even more than half of it's just gone already. But to say that when you hear claims that things like the blockchain is like it's there forever, and if you have the technical means to actually be able to investigate those claims and actually see if they actually mean what they say, and it's not even true. It's the same. They're running into the exact same problems that we've already ran into decades ago, and it's but it's
Just
kind of
attaching a new brand and a bit more money.
It's just a bit more marketing hyper this time. Maybe but it's.
I remember kind of early when we were discussing this project, you were also talking about the infrastructural fragility of the internet, and
Exactly.
kind of.
Yeah.
I wonder if, for people who are not game developers or web developers, you could kind of speak to that a little bit. What that actually, I think probably quite a lot of people in here think of the internet in the same way, in the same sort of abstract way they might think of electricity being available in their home. They assume that it'll work. It's annoying when it doesn't, but we don't really think about how it happens.
This website's going to be here. Facebook's always going to be open.
Yeah.
Twitter's going to stay on.
So I guess I'm asking you what the internet is, which is a bit rude.
You're asking the wrong
But
person.
no, but if you could like unpack kind of what that like infrastructural fragility looks like what does that mean?
Oh.
Too much of a question, or?
I don't know.
Vague?
Like, just trying to find a way to attack the question, because I mean, like I'm sure everyone has experienced something like this, of like a website that you tried to visit, it's not there anymore, or like like a tweet that's been deleted. But that's its own thing. But it's this idea that like I think there's this idea that like particularly when a lot of talk around crypto was around like decentralizing and taking ownership of your own data, because we're all kind of like have this like lingering anxiety around all these big platforms that harvest so much data about us, and we'll use it in ways that aren't even necessarily in our own best interest. We're using our own data against it, and a lot of crypto companies want to tap into that anxiety and say, well, on the blockchain you actually own your data, it'll be yours. But there's no real idea on what that actually tangibly means to people. No one really understands what that means. It sounds nice, but but for most people, it's like it's an impracticality at best. If you ran your own server just in your own home, you could own your own data, you run your own server. But for most people, that's out of their depth. Like that is like too hard to set up, and it's not even recommended that you do it that way. there's this all these skills that you need to learn in order to actually run your own server and run your own website or run your own even like Mastodon, which is like an alternative to Twitter, which is like a lot more open source, and is like you could, theoretically you could run your own Twitter. That's still out of depth for most people, and even for me. I've tried it and it's way too hard to do.
I have like 2 fairly simple examples, I think, of that scenario, and like one of them is like when Flash got taken offline.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
When Flash was, Adobe was like, you know what, Flash, no one uses it anymore. No one needs it anymore. So let's shut it down. And then like all this like these animations, these websites, these things that people cherish just completely couldn't be read anymore. Like you couldn't be accessed anymore. And that was like it. And that was entirely the decision of Adobe, and it wasn't anyone else's. The other examples that I have is actually probably the biggest inspiration for why I just became fixated on this idea for hyperecho in the first place is I was rewatching John Boy's documentary, The Bob Emergency. And in that, so this is like a whole documentary about sports players named Bob and how like the name Bob has been declining over the years, and like now there's like maybe 6 Bobs in sports, and that's kind of a tragedy.
It's really sad.
Anyway, in one, actually, and this is like thematically relevant in both the documentary and what we're talking about right now. In this documentary, John Boyce, the documentarian, one of his references for one of these players, he's a hockey player, he's called Bob as well, and he gets into fights a lot. And there was this website about hockey players that get into fights, and there was like all these stats about the fights and like all these things that these people collated kind of like as a community thing for fun. And as he was making this documentary, that website just went offline, like without a trace. It just like one morning he just opens it up, not there anymore. And he was just like kind of reflecting on that very fact, like during the documentary, being like, this is just like the Bobs, they just disappear and then what, right? Like this entire thing that has its history and that a lot of people clearly cherished, gone overnight. And like I was watching that, and I was like, so true. And then I was like, Andy, how about this? It kind of like feels like I had that like light bulb moment of like, this is it. This is what I want to talk about. I think I kind of like had that idea for sure, and I think we were on the same wavelength at the time. But anyway, yeah.
So the technical underpinning of hyperecho is also significantly, from what I understand it, more complicated than previous zones.
Yeah.
And there are kind of different challenges that came with making a durational online multiplayer work that changed internally over time. I believe there's somebody we wanted to shout out.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm just going to leave this on the screen, but I was wondering kind of how you approached, like, let's talk about it. How did you
Let's talk about Brandon.
Let's talk about Brandon. Should we say his surname or nah? Just Brandon.
Brandon Hare.
Okay, there we go.
It's in his Twitter name.
I wasn't
Not
sure how
the Twitter
much.
handle.
No.
I wasn't sure how much cryptid vibe he wanted to retain.
Well,
It's fine. He uses his full name for everything.
yeah.
But yeah,
But
maybe.
we've never seen him in person. This is the only photo we have.
I think he's pixelated in real life too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It's hard, yeah.
You can't approach.
Like, he looks like that.
So Brandon was the engineer on hyperecho?
Yeah, he was definitely, so Brandon was like one of the main programmers for hyperecho, and I think fundamentally we probably could not have been able to make this anything close without all the time and effort that he volunteered to help us out. So in regards to hyperecho, for the zones that we would have made previously, we're kind of building on top of like open source code that we were using. Like, so the original zone that Cecile and Jay made for free play was based off a like zone, and we probably mentioned this earlier. Was based off like a like zone. It's like a tiny online game where people can go and see exhibits, and Cecile and Jay used that to make a virtual space for free play because you had to go online. With Hyperecho, we made the decision that because we're going to be so fundamentally different to the original zone, we would just create it from scratch, basically. Then this was kind of like getting really into the depths of learning JavaScript because we knew there was going to be a web game, so I had to work on any kind of browser, and of course with the buildings and things like that, we needed a way to kind of store that and be able to show that to people when they visit the site. So yeah, and this was mostly Brandon's responsibility, and he's got a very extensive history of working for all these different companies. And this is like very much within his wheelhouse. So we're kind of very lucky to have him, and he's just someone who came from the zones that Cecile and Jay made for free play, and from there joined the Discord. So and yeah, that's kind of like one of those like amazing things that happened just due to Cecile and Jay's like a pioneering effort to make a virtual space for free play. We probably wouldn't have met Brendan otherwise.
Yeah, because I think at the time too, Brandon was in America, and or like the first, like in 2020.
Yeah.
He was in America, and he logged into the zone with the name Hello, and we were all like familiar with him with the name. Oh, Hello is here.
Oh, Hello is here.
And then we slowly found out. I mean, we suddenly found out that his name was Brandon. We didn't.
It's really a kind of binary situation. You either know or you don't know.
We were given one letter.
One letter at a time.
Wait. Crystal, I'm really interested in your kind of history with this project as well, because I know Cecile and Andy had worked together quite a lot before. Did you also enter via Discord?
Yeah, I did. So I joined through the Parallels 3 Players Zone event, I guess, and then I met everyone in the Discord through there, I guess, yeah.
Incredible. Am I right in thinking that one of the things you worked on was the decaying? The message decay?
Yeah, the message decay was something that I worked on with John, trying to get it to look really like visually decayed. So we used a bunch of like noise patterns and stuff like that to overlay onto it. Yeah.
I'm really interested in the like emotion of that process, I guess, like designing how something breaks. Have you like worked, I mean, what experience could be comparable? Like, how did you begin approaching it? What were you trying to elicit? That's too many questions, sorry.
Wanted, like, when you see your own message or someone else's message, you just be like, oh no, it's gone. Like, or like, I can't read it anymore. But that sense of like, yeah, it's destroyed and decayed, I guess.
I guess I remember like the way the messages decay is that you kind of like using an image, using like a multiply effect to kind of get that, using the image as like a texture to like kind of break up the message itself.
Yeah,
and I remember you trying different images.
We tried a few different noise patterns to get it like just exactly right.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's really well done. Like I think like when it finally came together, we were like, oh my god, this is like amazing. It was like, holy crap.
It was kind of like one of those things where like that task was delegated to like Crystal, and then you just came out with something that like, oh, this is
absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, because the first thing I tried was just replacing some of the letters with X's, and I was like, that's not like quite enough to like really put it through that like this was here once and now it has been decayed. So
yeah, it's very distinct from a transformation. It is directly a loss, is what you're kind of depicting.
Yeah.
Another more recent addition to the Discord is writer Claire Osborne-Lee, who kept a fortnightly traveller's diary documenting her experience of Hyperecho in the 3 months that it was live, and how the space changed over the time that it was live. And in one entry, she is here. She and she's in the room right now. In one of her entries, she draws this really great link between hyperecho and situationism. And I'm actually going to quote her directly. She describes it like so. The exploration of hyperecho is playful and perambulatory. It relies on an encounter with another player or message or large expanse of nothing. The Situationist International called this kind of exploration derive. When we traverse urban space, it's normally on our way to and from work. It is driven by our labour or by the distractions of advertisements and shop windows. Derive is the antidote, allowing us to untether these consumerist relations. And hyperecho's derive is quite similar. Without property and without the ordinary quest and mission markers which normally drive video game exploration, players are able to wander free, relating to this city or digital space directed by community and curiosity. I think that's a really astute observation about hyperecho that actually extends back into previous works, particularly of yours, Cecile's, but also projects that you and Andrew have worked on together, like Touch Melbourne. I wondered if you could speak a little bit to kind of the influence of situationism on your work.
Yeah, I think like when Claire talked about like derive and like situationism in like hyperecho, I was like, how did you know? Like I was just like, I didn't even like, you know, consciously do it. It's just like the kind of thing where I was like, this is absolutely something that has been like in the back of my mind for like ages and like absolutely influences my work. And I was like, how does one even connect to my brain like that? I don't know. And so I was really just kind of, I felt really seen in a way, in a good way. It was just like, wow, that's amazing. And I think like, I always just had this like really, like, this fascination with relating with geographical space in this very playful way, and like it's a very playful and instinctive way. And you know, I think like a lot of the work that I've made so far is very much about places and people and places and all these things. And Touch Melbourne is one of the first games that I made. I made it with you. Yeah. And we made it in like 3 days.
Yeah, Touch Melbourne was a game that we made for a game jam that was hosted by Blue Light Collective back in 2018, I think.
2018, yeah.
Yeah. And that was probably around the time Cecile and I had just started dating, and I think I pitched the idea to let's make a game together.
Yeah. And I think like we were like, oh, we're in the CBD, let's just make a game about here. And we
forget what the theme was.
Was there a theme? I don't remember.
There was a theme.
Maybe we just ignore the theme. I don't know. I don't remember. But either way, I think like I was like, I'm gonna take a walk and see what's interesting, or like, you know, like because we're already thinking like we want to have like this, like what are the things that you touch, you know, or have interaction.
The theme must have been touch, I think.
It must have been touch.
Must have been touch, and then we.
Yeah, and so I think we had several ideas at first, and then I was like, I'm going to take a walk and see.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to spend this hour like making some basic like touch, like code, so that you can like, as if you can like, stuff that you could like make a button and things like that, and then still went on a walk. Yeah, and I was just like walking around, being like, what can we do? Yeah, I'm going to touch. Yeah. And it was really, I don't know, it just came about really organically as well, I think. Like, and that was really fun to work on. And I just did like all the illustrations. And yeah, it felt like a very interesting hybrid of my previous comics work and your like game skills. I make things on the computer.
I know. We all do. We all do in this room. And yeah, like I think it's like, I hadn't made the connection between like Touch Melbourne and like I guess like that like situationist like philosophy and hyperecho, but I think like that's, I mean,
It's just-
it feels, yeah, I'm like,
Just
that
like,
makes
oh
sense.
my god, like you.
How predictable are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, Touch Melbourne is kind of more of a, I mean, it is a linear experience, unlike hyperecho, which is sort of a plane to inhabit rather than a story to kind of follow. But it really is essentially like a sensory snapshot of the experience of moving through Melbourne. I know you recorded some sounds.
Oh, that's
for
right. That's right.
The tagging of the Mikey. There's a good story you have about
Yeah.
the traffic light as well.
So with the a pedestrian button that you see on the third tile, is that I tried to find like a good, nice open source sound for that, so I could use it in the game. So if you press it, it would do that kind of, it would be beeping, and then when it would go off, it would do that. So I really wanted that sound, and it's really kind of funny because like kind of the year previously I was in Europe, and I was definitely feeling homesick about Australia. One of the first things that sounds very dumb, but the things that made me kind of really almost like feel a bit like realize that I was homesick was when I came back to Melbourne and then like press the button and waited for that sign. It's like in Europe it's an entirely different sound, but like that sound is like, oh, I'm back in Australia. It's just really dumb things. I think I was very precious about getting the sound right, and I couldn't find a good sound that was like nice and isolated. So I actually went around up and down Sydney Road to like find a spot where there wasn't too many cars, so I could actually get that sound and isolate it. And I just had my phone, just like recording, just waiting to like pretending to cross the road, but actually just like holding my phone out to get the sound.
How long did you keep up the pretense before you were like, okay, fine, everybody can see that I'm just recording this crosswalk sound?
No, I kept up the whole way until I got it right. But it was funny too, because even that little process, and this is such a funny little tangent, it took me a few tries because I wasn't happy with it. Like it was either this is too fast, and I actually got and now I can't not hear it. Sometimes I'll hear like a crosswalk, like a bell that's like, that's going way too fast, or this one's way too slow, they need to replace that soon. And
some that straight up don't work.
some of them don't work.
There's one on Sydney Road that doesn't work, and I'm like,
yeah. So I was really precious about getting that particular sound that I wanted, and I spent ages to get it right, and I'm happy with it now. I've got it. But yeah, that one I just recorded on my phone.
I think the idea of bringing that sort of concept of the derive to the digital space is really interesting, because in a similar way, kind of digital spaces are increasingly commoditized and algorithmically sort of led to funnel audiences to particular, in particular directions. You know, I sort of think on one end of the spectrum, there's like the Wikipedia wormhole, where you just click through interesting Wikipedia pages, seeing where you end up. And TikTok is like on the other end of the spectrum, right? Where like you are getting funneled, and you do, like the algorithm is feeding you content and you don't know why. Or what data of yours it's using to kind of curate that content, and it increasingly looks like it's a really troubling amount of data that is shockingly not dealt with or stored very ethically. You mentioned earlier that you have generally been pretty vocal about your opposition to like Web3, blockchain, that sort of so-called.
Yeah, that kind of circle, that's
Yeah. And I'm just kind of interested in hearing how that political and like artistic sort of stance informs your approach to game development, not just hyperecho, but including hyperecho. Because as again you mentioned, there is an increasing Web3 presence in game dev.
Increasingly, but I think over the course of the year, we're kind of already seeing it now, like beginning to kind of like unfold. I think a lot of people have started to kind of catch on that this perhaps isn't where, perhaps this is not where the future of games is going to be. And like a lot of companies are either creating staff layovers, or they're just going bust. And a lot of the big players are getting they're being investigated for a lot of fraud and securities fraud and all this other nasty stuff that, if you're paying attention, you probably could have predicted. But
Who would have thought that these
thought?
promises that seemed
Who
way
would have
too
thought-
good
yeah.
to be true?
yeah.
I think in terms of like philosophical like stance, or like you know the way that it changes, the way that, I mean, personally I approach like game making is that I think like what really, I don't know what it is. I think it's like the like financialization and commodification of like anything that you make, even like if it's like for fun or like, or you know, it's like this, everything is a hustle and that sort of thing. It's just like, well, maybe not, like, can we not, like, just that sort of thing. It's like it's one thing to, you know, put your work out there and maybe, you know, maybe someone will like give you like $5 for it, sure. But it kind of like becomes different when like that becomes the whole like scheme where you just kind of want to make more and more and more and more from like the one thing, and it just kind of like makes me uncomfortable. And the fact that it's just so widespread, I mean, not widespread, it's just like kind of like this thing that people hype up as in like, you could make like fantastic amounts of money out of it, and it's like, no, most people don't. And it just kind of feels like it takes the, I don't know, it sounds like kind of silly to say, but it just kind of takes a lot of like the heart out of it, and it's like, what's the point of making anything if you're like, if you don't like, if you're not serious about it in a philosophical way, and it's just like to make a quick buck, then what are you doing? Like, what's the point? That's kind of how it makes me feel.
I mean, very well said, I would say. Maybe we can kind of move on from development into kind of talking about the live work. You had obviously spent months formulating this work, and then you put it out into the world. I know that we had conversations kind of preempting some potential, you know, sensitivities or issues, like we opted to have a symbolic language rather than letting people write whatever they want, because the internet is a cruel place.
It would have been a nightmare to moderate if we let that in, and that's definitely like a decision that we kind of decided on later. One of the ideas that we originally had was having like a Dark Souls like text pool where you could pick from a set of words that we would have curated. You could maybe create a sentence like that, and you know it would have been great to have like a lot of people have put down a message and just like they've worked out how to write butthole with the words that we've given them, and that's like not what we intended, but that would have been great for us to kind of see how people would have been used that to be creative. And but then ultimately I think we ended up with the idea of like just using the glyphs, and that was kind of, to us, it just felt a bit more stronger. It played into like the kind of ideas that we would have had. There's a lot more stronger inspirations behind that, and we kind of thought it was a bit more compelling and interesting. So this is why we went to using glyphs, and plus we didn't have to moderate it.
I think like we had like a really lengthy discussion about moderation. Like you definitely had some really good insight, Crystal, about it, because like you had.
It was kind of based on like some of the previous work that I had done for the West Australian Museum, where you kind of have to be very careful about what people can create, and
Despite, or maybe as well, with these safeguards in mind, were there player behaviours that surprised you, including positively surprised you, particularly when the work, like in the early days of the work?
Absolutely, there were heaps. There were very many things that we kind of pleasantly surprised by. I think most of the stuff that we were surprised with were definitely very positive. There's very little that we kind of, you know, because I think while we were making it, we were kind of planning for the worst possible scenario. People are going to use the buildings to kind of create like the worst thing ever. So you might maybe just make like a swastika or something like that, and you just and the whole work would just be someone's gone and made like 100 of these and just absolutely ruin the place, which fortunately didn't happen, which we're actually really happy with. But what most people have been surprised with is like how much people were on board with what we were presenting. People absolutely just like tore it to shreds in a really good way. Like one of the things was that when I made the map, because the map in the game is like something I kind of drew by hand. I used a bunch of different filters and effects to create it, but we were kind of trying to work out the right size, like would this be too big or too small? And then we thought, oh, this should be big enough. And then I went and made it, and then the first day, everyone's already gone and explored way beyond the map. And then like
By building bridges.
building a bridge all the way out into the middle of nowhere, like far beyond what any of us were even expecting. On the first day, so it was like, oh, good. It's like it's really nice to kind of have your ass handed to in that way.
Yeah.
If you like try to anticipate like the players' behaviour, that they're just gonna absolutely just go full on with trying to like not necessarily trying to break it, but like really that people want to try and find the limit all the time, which is like it's always kind of fun to see. And from there, kind of seeing like the kind of things you didn't think were possible, and then you go, oh, of course, that, yeah, all right, that's good, that's great. And there's lots of little moments like that. Can't really think of too many right now, but yeah.
I think one towards the very end of the work
Oh, yeah.
that we have to talk about
We have to talk about
is the prisoner.
I think it's going to come up like in a bit there. There we go.
So, yeah,
There's
up
the
in that
prisoner.
corner is a prisoner.
Maybe Crystal, do you want to
Yeah.
tell the crowd about what the prisoner is?
So I don't know who it was that found the prisoner.
It must have been Brandon. I think Brandon
Yeah.
would have been looking.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was someone
I
else.
think
I'm not
like
sure.
Brandon or someone like posted like the full like map of like how far like some of the bridges extended, and we're like, what's happening here? And I think like one of the party, the closing party, went like
We
down
followed a
this-
bridge
yeah,
all the
followed
way
bridge
down.
and was like, hey, there's a prisoner here, and then it just like sent us the location, and we all just like got there, and like, what's going on here?
Felt like a horror movie.
No, not really.
So,
It was
like-
just like, huh?
Who is this mysterious presence?
Yeah.
Who had essentially someone had barricaded themselves in by building buildings around them, so they couldn't leave and nobody could get in to join them. And they must, I mean, I think I
There were two
remember
people
I think,
speaking
yeah.
to Brandon, the session had been live for days at a time. So this person had been in the prison, fastidiously maintaining it. And then other players, as they do, kind of reacted
Yeah.
to the presence of the prisoner in like an equally creative way.
Trying to figure out who these people were, I guess, and like
Yeah.
how did they get there? And we
Yeah.
found this like message that they left for us.
Yeah, it was just
built
their
out of
names.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the name? Billy, do you remember the names?
Yeah, I had to get a friend of mine who's Russian to translate the names. It was Rostislav and Stefan.
Shout outs.
Shout outs to Rostislav and Stefan.
Yeah, legends, absolute legends.
We kind of met up in the Discord on the final day of the exhibition to sort of see the project out, and I spent a lot of the last few moments of Hyperecho with the prisoner, leaving messages like quite a lot of people did, kind of expressing support or like wishes for the prisoner's freedom. And it was surprisingly I suppose not surprisingly, but it was a really like quite emotional experience watching the work go offline. I wonder how it was for you three, maybe starting with you, Crystal.
Yeah, it was pretty strange. Oh, can I talk about something that happened before it went offline?
Yes.
Absolutely.
There was one point where I was exploring, or it might not have been me, someone was exploring, and we have like debug tools, so we use them to be able to do stuff like walk through walls and zoom out really far, stuff like that. Someone used it and saw that there was just like a fish like made out of harbours and buildings, but it was away from the main landmass, and there was no possible way that you could get out there. And none of us had made it, so we were just like, where did this come from? And I was just trying to like think like, who could possibly have made this? Like, and then it kind of hit me that it could have been like a calling card of some kind, and it was. So Cam, one of the people behind Fish Zone, was who I thought it was. So I messaged Cam on Discord and was like, did you do this? And then just sent a screenshot of it. And he was like, are you mad about it?
Are you
So hang on.
Like, no, that's amazing. Like, this is so good. Thank you for doing this.
What is Fish Zone?
So Fish Zone is like a small student project made by Cam and a bunch of other people. I don't know. I'm sorry, but it's just basically a zone.
Was it RMIT or was it Swinburne?
I can't remember if it was RMIT or Swinburne.
Oh god, this is very
So
embarrassing.
what I'm hearing is that the zones are proliferating
Ano-
And
yeah.
there's a network of zones.
endlessly.
There's a zone
Yeah.
network, a zone underground.
Incredible. So when you say a calling card, do you mean, what exactly do you mean?
Well, like, I don't know. I just remember the movie like Home Alone where they like leave the sink on. They're like, where the wet band is. We've got to have it. Like,
Yeah, as in like kind of a signature, just like the prisoner tag duo. Like, just, I think like a lot of people are tempted to leave their name or like identity somewhere, and for Cam it was the fish in the middle of the ocean. You know, figures. And yeah, like, and a lot of people just like ended up taking a bit of a glyph to identify themselves and sign their messages with. But yeah, calling cards, they come in many ways, many forms.
what was the question that I like before I redirected it?
So it
Sorry.
was how you felt when the work ended.
It was a really strange, like, melancholy feeling. Like, the page would automatically refresh, like, as soon as it went down, and then it was just this static page, and I was like, oh, it's gone. Where did it go? It was just eerie.
Ooh.
Oh, you can actually replay the.
Yeah, we've got. Well, it was eerie. It felt very shocking to like suddenly kind of get booted out in that way. But something that you have been working on to kind of memorialize the zone is this timeline, which should be live on hyperecho.acme.net.au now, if anybody wants to explore it.
You can literally just
It works fine on
that's
mobile,
live,
and it allows you to walk around the full map of HyperEcho, scrubbing backwards and forwards through time to look at how HyperEcho looked on different days of its life.
You can even replay its last moments. Again and again. I think it's actually pretty good because, like, if you try it, it's like you see everyone kind of like, you know, squeaking around the spawn, and then it just like disappears. And we were like, that's it. Like, I think we were discussing like, how do we want this end to come? And we were thinking, oh, it could be like something nice, like some kind of like, not fireworks, but you know, something. And we were just like, nah, let's
We went with the easiest solution.
Easy.
It turns off.
Let's just do something easy. Let's turn it off. And it's also somehow the most like emotionally like potent, I think, because it definitely has that.
It's like somewhat shocking.
Yeah,
And then you kind of left to process
And
it,
then it's like, well,
which was like it was the most effective thing. So.
Similar to the kind of design of the way the messages decayed, it was very clear that it wasn't a transformation, it was an ending.
Yeah.
It was over.
Yeah.
But it's very lovely that we have the kind of ghost of HyperEcho to revisit and explore.
Yeah.
And I love that you styled the little bean in the same blue as the buildings when they decay.
Yeah. the traveller, or as we now call this character, the observer, because they cannot they cannot interact with anything anymore. They can only go back through the history of the whole exhibit. So this is kind of how, like you can't place a building or leave a message anymore. But this is kind of how we wanted to preserve Hyper Echo for the future. We kind of, it's kind of, in some way you could probably read this a bit disingenuous that look, these buildings are going to decay. But we wanted to kind of like, because part of when we thought about this work, we wanted to think about how would this be preserved, considering it was like a durational work that existed a brief period of time. Like how could you talk about it, like about this work 10 years from now? And kind of what we kind of originally had in mind from the outset was that we would have this kind of, potentially, if we could do it, if we're able to do this, then we'd be great. Have something that's some kind of timeline where you could actually go through and revisit and see all the messages that people left behind. Particularly when we gave them a brief of this would exist for 3 months and then be gone forever. But this is kind of what we had in mind for being able to experience this work in the future. And you can't place anything new anymore. You can only just see what people placed. What it was, and try to like, if you like, you had to be there, but you can kind of, but we kind of thought it'd be interesting to kind of have this kind of experience as well for people who didn't experience the work. And it was like surprisingly, like work turned out extremely well. Again, this is like another thing that Brandon pioneered and was able to make work. And this could be downloaded. You could have this as like a static page, and you could keep your own copy of Hyper Echo on your own computer. This doesn't need to talk to a server or anything like that. There's no, you can't experience this with other players. This is like a solo experience of just like seeing like this the community unfold and build stuff around. And one of the really cool technical things about this is that all the data for this 3-month exhibition, like Brandon managed to get everything down to like 5 megabytes. So it's like less than an image of like all the data, every building placed, every repair, every message, every squeak, which is like a thing that we added like towards the end. You could, like, the player could squeak. If you can, like, whoever's controlling this, if you touch on the player, are they around? Who's playing this?
Who's playing this?
It's playing itself.
If you touch the player, yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Little squeak. And that 5 megabytes, just to remind everyone, includes almost 20,000 buildings, and 54,000 repairs. It's pretty
impressive work. We were definitely like expecting, accounting for the worst case scenario, that we'd be having to deal with like a gigabyte of data or something like that, or 10 gigabytes. But perhaps Brandon was maybe overstating it. But
Another player?
no.
Not allowed.
No. I think Brandon made a change.
Oh,
He's changed the colours on them.
This is a ghost.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for introducing us to the timeline and for kind of processing the ghost of Hyper Echo with us. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 audience questions, if anybody has anything they want to know.
Yep.
Down the front here.
Do you have a favourite glyph?
Chick with the boots.
Chick with the boots. If you go to the credits,
Literal chick, bird.
Yeah.
bird with boots.
Sorry, the broad.
The Sheila.
Yeah, if you go into the
credits,
yeah.
we all picked out our own individual favourite glyph.
That's right.
You click the help icon up the top on the top left.
The question mark.
Question mark.
I can't control anything. There we go.
You scroll down to the credits. We've got.
Oh, oops.
Oh no! Wait, yours is actually the rat.
No, yeah, well, it's not like that.
Okay. Okay. The favorite glyph.
Oh.
It's also my favorite, but
They're all
who
my
am I to
favorite.
pick a child?
You did make them. It's true.
Were there any other? Wait. Crystal. Andy, favorite glyph?
Favorite glyph. I like mushroom. It's good. I think that's
good.
literally what's in my credit, but
Yeah.
it's good.
The
I like
frog.
scenery.
The frog.
Frog is good too.
Nice.
I like the frog a lot. I really like the walking boots.
Oh
They're
yes.
They're really good.
Yeah. I think like I also like the landscape ones with the, like the sunset and the moon set. It's good. I think
Moonrise?
it's, Moonrise.
Yeah, people wrote really cool poems. for
Yeah.
those.
Oh yeah. Like I think like I mean I'm probably just gonna write a blog post about the glyphs and like the way that people like wrote messages and stuff. But like I think that I'm really glad that people really took that and just like had fun with it. I think the glyphs. I'm really really proud of it. I feel like I mean yeah, it's probably the biggest thing that I feel like that's in a way that's all me, like the glyphs. So I'm like, oh, great. I'm glad that people like it. But yeah, another thing that I did want to. No, that's fine.
One final question for anybody. Want to say anything?
Hi, big fan.
Same.
I was just wondering about this. Does the old links that you could save and send to other people, do they still work for the timeline one?
Extremely good question. I think
they
they
do.
should still work.
I think they do.
Because I don't know how I'm going to find that prison without the link.
I think they do. They might like bring you to the present. I think that's what happens, and then you can save like a specific date and time if you.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Like I think I tested that this
Yeah,
afternoon.
we've included a little log so you can actually
my
keep track of
gosh,
stuff
how
inside the
gorgeous.
game as well.
Oh, that's
You
brilliant.
can like
Thank you.
add a little label, particularly if you wanted to like capture like not only a location but the time as well. Like that'll be recorded in the
Your
little
travel log, yeah.
in the logbook.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, so that's the start, and yeah, that's something we managed to put together in the last couple of weeks, and extremely happy with it. So yeah, excited for people to check it out, and definitely share stuff in the Discord server that we made for Hyper as well. We definitely, now that it's out, we want to kind of see what people have managed to find when they kind of go back and explore, like through time.
I mean, we didn't even get into Frog Village, and we don't have time now.
We don't have time.
But yeah, definitely one to revisit in the Discord, I would say.
Yeah.
There's plenty to see. Crystal, Cecile, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, like I said, hyperecho.acme.net.au. Check out the timeline. And next month, we'll be talking to 2 Point Interactive about their game Heavenly Bodies.
Ooh.
Thank you so much for coming.